Welcome to Creating the Muse podcast, brought to you by Indah Pages. This is a space where creativity takes center stage and entrepreneurship becomes an art form. Join us as we dive into the stories of visionary individuals who have harnessed their inner muse to build thriving businesses and craft lives of passion and purpose.
There we go.
Real good. All right. Welcome to another episode of Creating the Muse, the podcast where we delve into the world of artistry, creativity, and self-expression. I'm your host, Indiana Holly, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing a remarkable photographer whose work embodies elegance, grace, and empowerment. Joining us is Louisa Seton, an artist whose lens captures the essence of the sacred feminine and celebrates the beauty of indigenous cultures. Raised amongst the vibrancy of Nairobi, is that correct? In Kenya,
Nairobi.
Nairobi, in Kenya. Louisa's journey into photography began with exploration, adventure, and a deep appreciation for cultural diversity. With a background in fine art and over 2 decades of experience, Louisa's work transcends mere imagery. It's a reflection of her profound connection to the world around her. From the vast landscapes of Africa to the intimate moments shared with women, each photograph tells a story of resilience, strength, and the enduring spirit of humanity. Welcome, Louisa, to Creating the Muse.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, so excited to have you here. Before we hit record, we're just capturing on how we met and how it's such a pleasure to be able to see each other's face and speak to each other face to face as well. And about how we met through Sophie Andrews, the meditation hunter. So it was lovely just being able to recap on how that connection formulated and how I was just so inspired when I went to credit your work on Sophie's cover feature and how you've gone from being a spotlight feature and now on the front cover of Creating the Muse.
It's so interesting how things unfold like that, isn't it? Like you did a feature on Sophie, and then it opened up. You saw the photos that I took of her, and that kind of opened up you featuring me. I love the way things kind of unfold.
Unfold.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's just a feeling you get. Like I was saying, I looked at your website and I was like, oh my God, this woman has to be on the front cover.
thank
I
you.
just want to plaster you everywhere.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I guess where I'd like to start is for those that aren't familiar, which I'm sure many are familiar with your work, is the journey through your creative path. So what has inspired you to choose photography as your primary medium for artistic expression, and how has this journey unfolded for you over the years?
Well, I was always very creative. I was a creative child. I loved art. I was always very nature orientated. I used to spend hours in the garden, just doing my own thing, just playing and being with the dogs. We had a lot of dogs when I was growing up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
How many is a lot of dogs? Like,
we had
could you?
about five.
Oh,
Five dogs.
wow.
Yeah, my mom used to breed Airedales. And so we always had dogs,
Yeah.
around us. And it was special, to have that kind of lifestyle where I was surrounded by nature, surrounded by animals, and then growing up in Kenya as well, where I had access to wildlife kind of on my doorstep and stuff. It was a beautiful
What?
upbringing. And I think that really, spending so much time in nature really inspires your creative mind. And then growing up in Nairobi as well, I was surrounded by a lot of different culture. And I got to see a lot of varying socioeconomic kind of how would you say, like
The scale, the diversity of it
yeah,
all.
the
Yeah.
diversity of it all, and also be able to kind of mingle in and out of all these different environments. It was just really easy for me. And I think it was just the way I was brought up and the environment I was in. And Nairobi's like a melting pot of culture, and there's like an expat community. There's the generational Kenyans who have white Kenyans who have lived there for years, and generations and generations, and then you've got obviously the African Kenyan people who it's their country, and I went to a school that was a multiracial school, obviously a British education system. You can hear it in my accent.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it was just a good upbringing, and I think my creativity just it was never stunted, so I guess. And at school I was always good at art, and my parents were very encouraging, and I do feel that there's a prevailing kind of belief, or in the 1980s there's a prevailing belief that academic subjects like math and science and stuff, they were the ones that you should be really focusing on as when you're at school, and I kind of feel that creative subjects were considered second class in a
I
way, because
remember. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, like it was like, if you get into a creative career, it's not going to amount to anything, or you're not going to be able to sustain a good lifestyle if you're in a creative career, which is absolute rubbish. Nowadays there's so much creativity around us. I mean, even look at your iPhone, all the icons, all the graphics, everything,
It's
it's
all
like such a
creativity.
all creativity. And I think, back in those days when I was growing up at school, it was kind of, even though I was extremely creative, there was it I did feel the backlash of, if you don't do the math, if you don't excel at those subjects as well, you're not going to become anything. And I think that also, in a subconscious way, did kind of put a bit of a, I don't really know how to explain, like, the value of what I could give out to the world, like, in a subconscious way, there was like, if you go down the creative route, you're not valued as not I can't.
I understand what you're saying. It's kind of like you were saying, it's second tier. So it's in your subconscious, if that's been programmed into you, that
Yeah.
when you go out to produce creativity, you've got that subconscious conversation in your head that's always clouding that and saying this is second tier. Do you know what I mean? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm so glad that I just can, really listen to my internal knowing and continue to do what I really loved, because I could have so easily swayed. So many people at uni would have loved to have gone into creative subjects, but because of their parents or their upbringing, they were kind of driven to go in another direction. And I'm actually, what I studied, I'm actually working in, and I've got a career in, and I think a lot of people go into uni to study one thing and come out in the real world and start working in something completely different. And so I really feel like I really stayed true to what I was devoted to creatively.
Wow. Can I just say for everybody listening that being embodied, and actually you are a case study of somebody who stayed true to herself and achieved massive success from doing that. For anybody second guessing that they can't take their creative pursuits and make a abundance for it, or a creative life or success from it. So I just love listening to this so much, Louis. This is amazing. It's so you were never swayed in any way? Did you at least try like office work, or
Oh
were
yeah,
there
I
moments where You were like,
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I finished uni, I needed to, get a job and stuff. And I did a lot of temp work, and I worked in the corporate world in as doing reception work, and then as a PA and an EA. I actually worked in banking as well. I
wow,
know, like
wow.
how I managed to do that. I just don't even know how I got through those years, because it was so not me.
Trying to
I used
mold yourself into to
Yeah, I
something that
always
you're
did the
not.
photography on the side though. I never gave that up. I always did it on the side. I was having like mini exhibitions in London, and I did work for a master printer in London as well. That was pretty amazing. So back in those days, everything was film and print. So after uni, I went to London for a few years. But I wasn't working in photography. I was assisting every now and again for free, because that's what you did.
Mm,
Um, but I was definitely working, trying to get an office job, but doing photography on the side,
you
and
couldn't let it
always,
go.
yeah, and always traveling. Like my London days, my whole focus was to make money as fast as possible to get out of UK so I could
Yeah.
travel the world.
Explore, adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did throughout my years of living there. I just worked and saved up money and then left. And then I would be in South America somewhere running out of money, going, oh my God, I've got to go back to London to make more money to leave. And then my partner at the time, I remember I was just unhappy living in London, and I just said, I've got to, I want to leave. And we weren't ready to go back to South Africa or Africa at that stage. He was South African. And we moved to Australia. I came first to kind of check it out on an adventure. And then he joined me. And that's how I ended up in Australia. But I loved this place, because as soon as I landed here, all the flora and fauna and the light and everything
Ah.
is very much like Kenya. And so I felt completely at home.
I love that so much. When mum came from South Africa, she said it reminded her of home because even because they went up north, Mount Isa, and
Ah,
she said even though you know how the heat waves on the earth, and she was like, "Yep, I can live here." Because I think they went to New Zealand first. It was bloody freezing for them, and there was the earthquakes, so that was nut. And then they went to Australia, and she's like, the trees reminded her of it, and just that heat wave and the earthiness of it. So. I can feel what you're saying when you said you come to Australia and just the nativeness of the bushes and everything. Yeah,
like the
yeah.
jacaranda trees, and
Oh God,
it's
yes. The
just,
purples and the reds and so
yeah,
beautiful.
and the frangipanis and the bird of paradise flowers. They were all in my garden in Kenya, so
What?
I
I
feel
love that.
totally at home.
How did
Yeah.
you transition being here though, especially with your partner? Was he a big yes, like to moving here, or was there a bit of
Yeah,
a transition period?
I think, I was the one who came first to check it out, and I think we were both pretty sick of London, but he had a good job in London. That was the only thing. So I didn't care about any of my work in London, because it wasn't um
Didn't
it
light
wasn't
you up?
filling my heart. Yeah. And so, but we were in love, and
Mm.
he came a couple of months later. Um and he stayed in Australia as well. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So
the
you both fell in love with the place.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh, sorry.
even in the first couple of years of working here, I was working in, just in Sydney CBD, in doing like PA work. And then I moved to a bank called West LB, and I don't even know how I did that job. I was working for the MD as his EA, and it was just so not, it just was not
Not in alignment at
not
all.
aligned at all. But it was a good salary, and again, it comes to that, you know, how are you going to make a living being a photographer? I had no connections here, and I had to start from scratch.
Mm.
But what I was doing during that job was I was doing wedding photography on the side. So I started shooting weddings kind of on weekends and stuff. And so I was still doing the wedding stuff, and I was just building up my portfolio. And also weddings are really, really good. I call them like, they're a good exercise of keeping you, like, you can't mess up when you shoot a wedding, and you've got to be on the ball, you've got to deliver, you're continuously shooting. There's
You're in
no
action
there's no
mode.
room to mess up, you know. So it was a really good training ground. And I was doing more and more weddings on weekends, and I happened to photograph this wedding of the creative director of an advertising company.
Wow.
And I photographed her wedding, and she really, really loved the photos. And she came back to me. This is while I was working in the bank. And she came back to me, and they had a proposal for a job that they needed a photographer for, but they didn't want a commercial photographer. They wanted like someone who was really good with people. And because she had seen the way I photographed her wedding, and you do have to be like quite a people person
Yeah,
to
bet. Yeah.
um, and they were doing a Cadbury's campaign, and they needed a photographer to shoot different families around Australia. And so they sent me this proposal, and I would have quoted them. I was so green, you know, I was so new to business and stuff in the photography world, and I would have quoted them like just absolutely undervaluing myself
Yeah.
completely in what I
Yeah.
quoted. And luckily they came back to me with their brief and how much they were going to pay
Oh,
me, and I
before
knew,
you went to them, is that right?
thank God.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
phenomenal. Because then you're like,
because
oh my God, my value in the market is way bigger than what I thought it was.
oh my
But-
gosh. Yeah, they like paid me half of what I was earning at the bank, like in one job.
Wow, that's
I
awesome.
know, and I couldn't believe it. And so what that was a big, big stepping stone for me, because what it did was created a little bit of a buffer for me to leave the corporate world. And I did the job for the agency, and I did a good job, and I got paid, and then I had this lump sum money.
Mm,
And I was always trying to leave the corporate, but I was always a little bit scared. I had one foot in, one
security
foot out.
blanket. That's what they
Yeah,
call it, the golden handcuffs. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't have the ingrained beliefs in that I have now, where I really, really trust my inner knowing, and I really trust that what I do will be um like, I just have an innate trust in the universe.
I love
I
that.
didn't have that at that time in my life.
Yeah.
I think that just comes with experience, and the more you develop your spirituality, and I'm quite spiritual, and the more I trust that the intuitive decisions I'm making within myself are the right decisions. At that time of my life, I didn't have such a firm belief in myself, all
Mm,
the trust in the universe and
mm.
my
You're
guides
just
around
working it
me.
all out, discovering,
Yeah.
self-discovery. Yeah.
And so I needed that little, I mean, it's quite intelligent to have that nest egg anyway before you like step into the
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
you know, and you change careers completely,
Yeah.
even though I had my foot in each. And so I ended up leaving the bank, and I took myself on a 3 months trip to India on my own. And I was like, great, I'm just going to reset. I'm going to go. I bought a new camera, really beautiful. I started working with the 5D Canons, which is I've gone through all of those, Canon 5D brands as they've developed. I
Yeah.
really love
Yeah.
that camera. Um, and I bought myself this Canon 5D, and I just went to India for 3 months. And explored. And it was
The
amazing because,
freedom of it all too.
yeah, and I've
Yeah.
always traveled. My whole life I've been traveling. So it was just really beautiful to go and also travel that long on my own and really develop my sense of self. And India is like a haven for photographers. And, you know, everywhere I looked was something incredibly beautiful and photogenic. And even the what people would perceive as not beautiful, I found so beautiful. And I think also just growing up in Africa and seeing all the poverty, it really was not difficult for me to witness, because I'd seen that my whole life, and
Yeah, yeah.
cultures, different religions, and um, I was just able to weave my way throughout these different kind of visual stories that I was seeing with my camera.
Oh, I love
Really,
that you call you it is visual storytelling. That's what your
yeah,
photos are. Yeah. What a life, a good old life you've lived, hey? Like what a journey and so many beautiful gifts that have been granted to you as well along the way for your own personal growth and your own exploration. So, and that in the background is was that from your first trip?
oh yeah, that's the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
was that
that's
was
one of
from
my
that one.
favorites. Yeah,
I,
I mean, I used to have African images all over my house, but now I've kind of change direction, and
yeah.
because I'm shooting more of the, you know, the feminine, and I feel a lot more kind of feminine in what I'm surrounding myself with. My
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely seen the transition, but I felt like when I was looking at your work, the femininity was always there. Do you know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah,
but the
yeah,
earthy feminine, the here and now, and yeah. So,
yeah, the
um,
African stuff definitely have has like um there was a spirit of female empowerment within the
oh God,
African
there's so much
imagery.
energy behind it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was always my whole vision with when I was photographing the tribal communities and the women within those indigenous communities was I was so interested in the use of adornment as self-expression.
Mm,
And it was the women who I felt were the backbone of the society, you know,
I
even though
love
it's
that.
patriarchal,
Yeah, yeah.
images
They were the
and
glue that kept
yeah,
things
and you
together.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I mean, the men, they did their thing and they go and look after the cattle, and they fend off um, anyone shifter. We call them shifter in Kenya. Shifter are people who come and steal your cattle.
Oh,
Or
wow.
like
Okay.
other tribes who come in and they try and, you know, take your cattle and steal them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
for eating or for
yeah,
just
they'll
for the
pull
breeding
for
or for
wealth
any reason.
or
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
you know, yeah.
Wow.
So the obviously the men have their roles, but the women, I just feel the women are the ones who are working on the land. They're the ones who are you know, looking after the children. They're they just do so much.
And in that experience, were you able to be there for a length of time so that you could really be within that culture and absorb the aspect that you're talking about? Like, were you there for a long period of time? And if so, what gift did that give you moving forward?
I wasn't I when I did these expeditions, when I would, so even though I was living in Australia, I'd go back to Kenya because all my family are there.
Oh,
And
of course, yeah.
yeah, and so it was really easy kind of access to these remote areas. My father is a a pilot. He was in
Wow.
the British SAS, and then he um, moved into like aviation. And in Kenya, there's a lot of people fly small aircraft because of the distances, and the roads are really bad, and so you can get to like remote areas in aircraft far quicker and easier than you
The
can
car.
like
Yeah.
driving 13 hours or 3 days or
Of
whatever it is.
course. Yeah.
And so when I was growing up, I used to go to a lot of these remote places with my dad. If he was doing certain jobs, I would hitch rides and kind of go into these villages. And there was a place called Turkana, which was way up North Kenya, very desert, remote, very dry. And there is a tribe there called the Turkana. And you've got other different tribes called Rendile and what are the other ones? There's a few around that area, but they live in very dry, arid, far to get to places. And so I had interactions with them, and I was always interested in the culture and ceremony and
Oh, yes.
yeah, and so I would take these trips with my dad, even though they were brief. But then when I started to like live in Australia and then go back to Kenya, I would go on my own expeditions, like 2-week expeditions or 3-week expeditions, which were intense.
I
And
bet.
even though I was traveling and driving, and I wouldn't stay in one village for like a long period, like 3 weeks. I don't think I I just that wasn't my aim, like I wanted to go to different
Explore it all. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I would go on these kind of, when I look back, they were quite wild, adventurous expeditions. I don't know if I really feel like doing that now. The last one I did was in 2019. For a couple of weeks up North Kenya. But it's those expeditions are not easy. They're funded by myself. You're sleeping outside, which is beautiful. So you're camping all the time, but I was sleeping on like
A stretcher, or were you on the ground?
yeah, like
Yeah.
a stretcher type camp bed with
Yeah.
under a tree or whatever. It's dry, it's dusty,
The
it's not
terrain sounds very rough. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. You've got to take all your food, stuff can go wrong, it's dangerous. It's it's just not it's not like you're staying in a beautiful Airbnb.
Mm, mm.
So you're in the middle of nowhere. And I had an experience when I did one of these expeditions by myself quite a few years ago, that I had a driver and I had a fixer. So a fixer is a guy who can translate from, say, the tribal language into English and then into the tribal
The
language into
dialect.
the the language of the country. Maybe it was Swahili, which I know basic Swahili because I grew up there, but
Yeah,
I'm not,
yeah.
and then into English. And this particular expedition that I did, I was in Ethiopia in the Upper Omo Valley, which is near the Sudanese border.
Mm.
And I was on my own with two men. And the thing is, I knew if I didn't do it, some people would say to me, well, you're so crazy going there on your own. And it is a little bit crazy. But if I'm not going to do it, if I don't set my intention to do these things, I won't get the shots that I'm trying to get. And I
You
want to
won't
go.
live your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've I also in some ways felt safer because I had a father who was in the SAS, the special forces. And so I knew that if anything went wrong, he would find me. And
Oh,
like, I
I
just know,
love that so much.
yeah, he would
Having that
find,
support,
I,
that safety net there.
yeah, I
Yeah.
totally trust that my father would
Always come and get you. Yeah.
find me wherever I was. And I did go missing for 5 days on this particular expedition.
What? What
Um,
does missing mean though? Like,
I we had um we ran into some problems, and I was in the middle of nowhere, and I did have like sat nav kind of system that would I would text on a burner phone my coordinates of where I was. But because we're in the middle of nowhere for so many days, that kind of ran out of battery, and we were in a without going into it's like a whole nother podcast.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really quite a traumatic experience. And the driver and I had to abandon the fixer and I had to abandon the vehicle and walk for like a whole day in the bush to try and find help. And it had been raining, torrential rain, like a torrential rain. And in
Wow.
those areas, the mud, it's black cotton soil, so the mud is really thick. So when you're
Yeah,
walking, it's like,
literally trudging through it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like an assault course, like a military assault course that you're, and it's like tough terrain. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's wildlife, there's wild animals,
My
like we're
God.
talking
You should
lions.
write a book.
There's militia, because I was on the border of Sudan. So militia, they're still in conflict. Actually, I'm not sure if they are now, but they were in conflict at the time. And so even the tribes that I was visiting up in that area carried AK-47. So it was confronting stuff. And then we had this big problem and we had to go and find help. And no one knew where I was for a few days. I literally lived all I had was the clothes on my back for 6 days. No showers, no nothing. It was
No water, no food. Like,
we had a little bit of water,
yeah.
and then I because of these environments and growing up in Kenya and stuff, I was clever with what I had my
Yeah.
passport hidden. I had some money in my shoe, so $100 and stuff, just in case I had to like bribe myself out of something. But we took all the water that we had, and we had like a couple of bananas, but that was it. We had to get help. Where we ended up was a really dodgy place, and I ended up seeking refuge in like a God, I can't believe.
It sounds like you were safer out with the wildlife and
Yeah, I sought refuge in it was like we ended up in this funny little town, which was like one dusty street where there was a shebeen, which is like an African kind of drink house, like a bar, but it's like cowboy country.
yeah.
And it had like a whorehouse
Oh
attached.
my God, for real? Oh,
I'm
it
serious.
literally it feels like something out of a movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but we're talking very basic because it's an African kind of
Yeah.
tin hut type thing. But that's where, because that was the only place I saw women, that I sought
Yeah,
refuge.
fair. Yeah.
But it was really a frightening experience, because I was a white woman in the middle of nowhere. Like it's just
How
it
did you even? No wonder your faith and trust is so strong because you got through all of that.
Yeah, and on top of that, it got worse. Like there's so
Oh
many
my
things that this
God.
story just goes on and on and on, and it got worse. But I think because of the situation that I was in, my body went into a bit of, I don't know, trauma response or something, and I ended up having
That
like,
fight and flight where you just keep pushing through. Yeah, you just do it
and
sort of thing. Yeah.
instead of kind of in those situations where you don't get your period, your
Yeah.
menstruation,
Yeah.
I got my period for like 20 days. I can't,
After the situation or
it started in the situation and it just went on.
wow, so the
It was
complete
so bizarre.
opposite.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I had nothing. I had nothing to help me
Oh my
during this
God.
time. I had, you know, one pair of underwear that I was wearing. I
Yeah.
had no tampons, no pads, no nothing. Like it was an interesting time. Like I had to really um just deal with that as well.
Yeah, on top of everything else.
Yeah. It was it was such an interesting time. Challenging.
I bet, Louise, like I couldn't even imagine what that would be like to experience something like that. But, and I can understand when you say it's probably a time in your life that you wouldn't, those
Uh,
exhibitions are probably not,
I don't really, yeah, I don't really have the energy for it now. And
no, yeah,
the
fair.
the good thing that happened out of that was I mean, there's so much that goes into that story, but what happened was I ended up hitching a ride with a lorry driver out of where I was into this little town that was, I don't know how long, maybe 12, I'm not sure how many hours away, but I was still with the fixer guy, but he kind of went a bit AWOL on me as well. And I eventually got to this town where there was more people, obviously more women. You can't really call it a town. It was like a big village. And I rang my dad because I was like, oh my God, they're going to be freaking out. They haven't heard from me. So
Oh
I rang
God,
my dad
yes.
and he was like, get out of there. Like, whatever you do, get out of there now. You know, you need to come home. And he's in Kenya, which is the bordering country
Mm.
in Nairobi. And I just managed to get my equipment back to me. Um, and I was like, I can't leave. How can I
After
leave
all of
now
that.
after
Yeah,
going through this
yeah.
whole situation where it was incredibly frightening? And now I've got all my equipment back, which was amazing. How can I not go and photograph
What you came
what
for.
I set out to do? You know,
Fair,
otherwise I
fair
would have
enough.
gone through it for nothing. And
Yeah.
my dad was, I guess, concerned about my safety and stuff. And so he was just like, get out of there. But I was like, no, I can't. Um, I'm going to see this through. And I ended up going to quite a few different tribal groups after that and photographing the Mercy tribe that are in Margot National Park, and they have lip plates and stuff. And then I photographed the Hammer, which are another beautiful, beautiful tribe. And the women look like they've walked off the catwalk. They've got these
Mm.
beautiful
Wow.
hairstyles that are all in
Oh,
twisted kind of um, red ochre hair, and they look like they're in bobs, sorry. And they just look, they're very tall. Ethiopian women are very tall and graceful,
I bet,
even when
yeah.
they're like working in the fields. It's a bit like the Indian women. They're very, you
They're
know,
like art themselves by the
yeah,
sounds of it. Piece of,
they should all
yeah.
be on a catwalk. And so I ended up taking these photographs. My heart wasn't so much in it because of the what I had endured.
Been through a lot of trauma
Yeah.
that you've been through.
And
Yeah.
anyway, I did what I needed to do. I left, and then it took me a while to look at the photographs because I just had to deal with what I had gone.
Decompress from it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my sister was like, "Oh, Louisa, you come on, you've got to look at the work that you've produced
Yeah.
from it's come, you didn't go there for nothing, obviously." And when I actually looked at the work that I produced, I couldn't believe it because some of it was like the best work I'd ever produced.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
Louisa.
And that's when I got um, CNN picked it up, the Daily Telegraph, like all these magazines, and the work that I shot during that expedition literally just went. And now I understand
Wow.
why I had to go through that
Oh my
experience.
God, yes.
I felt like I was so deep in the story of the land, the people, what was going on with me. I was so much a part of it that, like, embodying it pretty much, that I couldn't not, the photos that I was taking were representing that.
Could see it all now.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
reflected back at me.
Oh, Louisa. And I know you said that your heart wasn't in it, but I feel like listening to you, your heart was in it. You were just traumatized and
I was
exhausted
tired.
because your heart was in it because you stayed. Do you know what I mean? So, wow. That is an incredible story, and I swear you must write a book. And so I have to ask after, like, I love that you were gifted, you took time and space to heal, clearly. And then you did look at the imagery, and thank God you did look at the imagery.
Yeah.
You did just go, that's too hard and park that sort of thing. But I have to ask, how was your healing process after all that? Like your body must have been out of whack if you had your period for 20 days, you're in
Yeah.
survival mode, you're in literally in dangerous situations all the time. Like, what was your healing journey after that, and where are you now? Is it still sitting in your body or
No, not at all. Not at all. Like, I've a long time after that, maybe a year or so, I questioned, I was like, why did I have to go through that experience? Because it it was traumatic, and it was very much, I was in fight or flight
the whole time?
the whole
Literally.
time,
Yeah.
like, so incredibly stressed out, even though I was just trying to maintain. Because you have to, and I am very, very calm though in situations like that. I can maintain um the
You don't fall apart. You don't
no,
go
I
into
think very
shock.
clearly. Yeah, and I had to, because of the situations that we were in.
Mm.
Otherwise, I could have got raped. Anything could have happened. It was very intense,
High risk all the way through.
very high risk.
Yeah.
Like, I learned a lot of lessons through that. Um, but I did, because I meditate a lot, and I did meditate over it, and I was like, why did that happen? And what I've come to understand in a more spiritual sense is that I had to go through that process where everything was stripped away from me. Everything. Like,
Literally everything.
literally everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I just had the clothes that were on my back. My photography equipment was gone. Like, my photography equipment is like my most prized
Part of who
possession.
you are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really care about much else except my camera,
Yeah. I love that.
but in a material
Y-
way.
Yeah. But it's an extension of who you are. So
Yeah, and so that was taken. I didn't like walking for hours and hours and hours in the middle of nowhere, not knowing whether we were going to be found, or um, what the situation was. I was completely stripped bare. And in that, you, in retrospect, like, at the time, it's very frightening. And I'm kind of tearing up a little bit. But in retrospect, it's the best thing that can happen to you, to be completely stripped down and, like, be on your knees. Like, one of my favorite sayings is, and I'm not sure who the quote is by, but it's, fall on your knee, fall down to your knees if you must, just as long as you grow there.
oh, I
And
love that so much.
yeah, and I felt that what happened was, in the years that followed, I really grew, because I realized that if I went through that, I could actually stand my ground with anything. I was a strong person,
Yeah.
um and so I just have to trust in myself, and also my angels, because I don't
They
know
were
what is alive,
definitely there.
but
Yeah.
I really feel like I do have a group of like, guides around me
Protecting
who
you.
protect
Literally
me and look after
protecting
me
you.
and guide me and drop things into my awareness a lot. And I luckily have I listen to that. I listen to that knowing. It's very deep within me, and it's helped me so much in so many ways. And to do the work that I do now, I think it's I think from a physical healing perspective, a couple of years later, I got an autoimmune, like it was an overactive,
Hashimoto's or
it was overactive thyroid and
hyperthyroid.
hyperthyroid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I totally healed myself in a natural way. It took me 3.5 months.
What? Can you
Yeah.
share? Can we share? Well,
Oh
sorry, you
yeah.
continue and then we'll go into
Yeah.
that.
So part of that healing was going, because I feel like that was triggered by
The
um,
trauma.
trauma. When you go through different traumatic periods during your life, it can, like, my adrenals were a bit messed up and stuff, and different. So what happened that year is I had this traumatic experience on my expedition happen, and then 3 months later my mother passed away. And
Oh,
so
that's
all in the same
terrible.
year. Yeah. And so I had these two things that happened that were very kind of
Full on to take
full-
heartbreak and yeah.
yeah, like
And
intense
that's a
heart.
trauma in itself. Losing your
Yeah.
mum.
And I feel like that triggered the overactive thyroid response, and a couple of other personal things kind of happened. And because, yeah, you just go through those timelines. And I had another experience where I was like in hospital for a couple of days, and this was all in like,
The same period, one after, like that whole
yeah,
saying, things happen in threes. Yeah,
and so I feel like that had like a really kind of big impact on my body, and that's why I ended up with
rightfully
thyroid.
so. Yeah.
And but that was really an interesting situation as well, because I went and had myself checked out, and I knew, things were really unbalanced. Like, I thought I was going through menopause or something, because your hormones are all over the place. I was getting anxiety, I was getting hot flushes at night, like all these different things. And I was
Mm.
telling a friend of mine on the phone, I really remember distinctly, I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. I'm never really anxious like this. I don't know what's happening. And then I ended up finding out it was my thyroid.
Mm.
And when I was at the doctor was like, okay, you need to go on this medication. You'll probably be on this medication for the rest of your life and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no,
Not
that's not
accepting
gonna,
that. Yeah,
I'm not,
love
yeah,
that.
I'm not accepting that. I had also been studying hypnotherapy at the time. I qualified as like a quantum healing hypnotherapist during that period. And it's very out there hypnotherapy. It's you deal with it's past life regression,
Mm.
and
Wow.
you talk to yourself.
Generational trauma and
Yeah. And so I was learning all about this, and how the body will create, emotional stuff that goes on with us. We store it in the body, and then
mm.
it comes out in a dis-ease or a physical ailment of some
Mm.
way. So because I'd been studying this, and it was the same year that I got, the thyroid issue, I was like, no, I can heal this myself. And also, this is an emotional, or something's happened within my life in order to bring this about.
Yeah, yeah.
I can heal myself. And I was really, really adamant that I could. And I think that's one of the strongest one of the strongest needs you have to have when you do want to go into a healing process, is a firm belief. That's it. It's not a need, it's a belief that you can heal. First,
Unwavering. It's like
unwavering.
nothing else. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I know instinctually what I need to do, and this
Yeah.
is how I'm going to, and I'm not kind of not even going to play with that idea sort of thing. You're like, that's
Yeah.
not acceptable. Yeah.
Totally. And so I went on a 3.5 month journey where I followed the medical medium. Have you heard the
I
medical medium?
had the celery juice guy. I bought his
Yeah, same.
thyroid book. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I followed that book. I read it back to back. That was like my Bible.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
took everything out of my diet that wasn't good for my body, and I implemented everything that was. And I was very strict.
Crowding out philosophy sort of thing. Yeah.
And the first week I actually did my own kind of juice fast and a water fast, and it was very interesting because I knew things were going to come up emotionally for me, because when you fast,
Yeah,
emotional
of
stuff comes up as
course.
well.
It's
So
kind of like when you do yoga and you're releasing the
yeah,
tissues and emotional stuff comes up. That makes sense to me.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when I was sleeping, I was having like dreams, and your dreams are a lot about your subconscious beliefs and conditioning and stuff. A lot of that can come up in your dreams.
Mm.
So that was happening. I was having these crazy dreams and having to kind of clear myself afterwards, and stand on the earth and kind of just allow the to clear and transmute that
Yeah,
energy out
yeah.
of my
I
body. And
love that.
then I wrote this whole prayer out, which I wrote on my bathroom tiles in my bathroom, in like the pens that you can rub off. They're like marker pens,
Yeah, yeah.
wood pens. And I wrote this whole prayer um out. So every morning I would meditate for 20 minutes, and then I would go and read my prayer and close my eyes, and it was all about bringing this beautiful white light through my body, like divine energy, Christ energy coming through and cleansing and clearing all, going into my cells and clearing out all the bad bacteria and viruses and all this stuff. And I just do this whole
Mm.
thing through my body, through my vital organs, and just releasing, clearing, and transmuting anything that wasn't in harmony with my body, and bringing myself back into balance and harmony again. And I did this for 3 months, 3.5 months. And I would go and get my bloods every day. Not every day, what am I talking about? Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. Just
To
to see
see.
the balances. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything just started to come back into balance
Alignment. Yeah.
again. And after 3.5 months, I was fine.
So can I ask, the medical medium side of things, how did you know that was the right thing for your body? Because, it's all about by individuality and everyone's got different cultures and
Mhm.
constitutions. So, how did you know that that was the right fit? And did you just feel into that and you knew that that's what your body was craving and needed?
I think it just resonated so much for me, and just the clean eating, and I've always been pretty healthy, um, and I've always, I've even when I was a little kid, I wasn't a child who would eat pizza and
It
lots
probably
of
wasn't an option for you.
uh,
Like,
well, there
yeah,
wasn't,
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, growing up in Kenya, you didn't have a
No more
box of
commercial. There's no
stuff.
commercial
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like when I was growing up, there were three cereals that you could get: Weetabix, cornflakes, and Rice
I love
Krispies,
that.
and that was it. And then I remember going to America and seeing aisles and aisles.
Oh, what a shock to the system
Yeah,
that
I
would
was
have
just
been.
like, how
Why?
is the choice, like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I still migrated towards Weetabix because it was like,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me, I don't
yeah,
eat cereal like that anymore. But
yeah.
as a child, I always kind of, I
You
just
knew.
was a clean eating child. I wasn't into
You weren't
uh,
attracted, didn't inspire you
no,
to.
and my mom was really good. Like she she made really good healthy meals, and we were never allowed sodas and stuff when I was a kid.
Mm,
And so it was kind of, we were quite healthy. Um, and I've always kind of sustained that. And so um I think reading his book and what he was suggesting just resonated completely with me and my
mm.
body.
You could, yeah.
Um, I also, yeah, I really love celery. I love it. And so I could drink like
Just
loads of that
amazing
stuff
things
if
for
it
your
was,
body.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and also he kind of links a lot back to Epstein-Barr virus as well.
Ah,
And I
yeah.
went and got tested and I had antibodies to that. I think mainly a lot of people do
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
have that within your system. And so I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, some random thing. So I went and got tested for that, and I did have Epstein-Barr, and it was really interesting, for me reading that book and then
Mm.
implementing everything and then coming out the other side of it.
Oh, I had no idea how extraordinary and like I knew you were remarkable, but this is just my mind is just I could sit down with you and talk to you for ages. Like the journey that you have been on and the healing journey alone. I mean, I seriously strongly advise that you must write a book about all of this. Like I would read it cover to cover. Um, and I love that you've been at the quote that you said literally brought me, like I could feel I was tearing up when you said that because it's this, what I see from that quote is like traumatic things happen in life and you can either play the victim and let that destroy you and destroy your life and destroy your experience on this planet, or as it said, you can bloom. And it feels like that's exactly what you did. You grew from that situation. Do you know what I mean? And you were, it's kind of like this, I like to call it this stubbornness within you when you know what's right and everyone else will tell you what's wrong. You're like, nah, nah, I know what's right. And you just lived, it sounds like you've lived your whole life like that. Like you've always, you went into banking, you were like, no. And then, do you know what I mean? Through school, you were like, no, math, science. You've always known instinctually what is right for you. And the fact that you've just lived your whole entire life like that is just deeply and truly inspiring to me. So I'm so in awe that you've shared that. And I feel like I'm tearing up. I don't know why. I'm not. But thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing that. So I have to ask, I know we're running out of time, but I had to touch on you've you've done those expeditions, you've gone through that in life, and it feels like you might be more in that the softness of the femininity now, which is why you've transitioned to the sacred feminine with your I think you said so I read somewhere it evokes a sense of grace and now it's visual poetry what you're creating for women. And it's not just photography, it's actually allowing women to embrace their femininity and self-worth. Can we step that into the
Yeah,
transition and the
yeah.
journal? The journal is phenomenal
Oh,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I had always, even at university when I was studying photography, I would get my friends to pose for me, and I was always interested in the feminine form, always. And then
It's
that kind of
beautiful.
stopped, like I was doing other forms of photographic work. I even when I in the early days of my freelancing, I was not doing what I'm doing now. Like I was working for different brands. I worked for um, Commonwealth Bank, and I photographed all the black and white photography it used to be their marketing campaign was the People's Bank, and they had lots of black and white photography where you'd walk into the bank. I don't know if you remember that in us here. And they had black and white photos all over the branches of people in the community and iconic features in wherever the branch was. And I used to do all that kind of photography.
That's
Or
so cool. You walk into a bank and all your work is up on display because
yeah,
they were quite big prints, weren't they?
yeah, huge. They were just
Yeah.
like glass prints. So I did there was myself and another photographer, and I traveled Australia doing that. And that was also, I think, what with the thyroid issue that I ended up having, it was very stressful work and it was very intense, and I was flying a lot all over the place, and it was it was like you had to deliver. It was incredibly stressful, and I only would have like 2 days in one area, and I'd have to shoot and get it
Wow.
all done, and then I'd have to move on to the next. It was really not an not
Going above and beyond.
yeah, it was really full on. And after my mom passed away, I just stopped that because
Anything that stresses you out. Yeah, fair.
yeah,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
just because it was just, I just didn't like working for a corporation like that, that I
Mm.
didn't feel had my
Not in
really,
alignment with you, let alone made you go above and beyond and override
yeah.
yourself all the time. Yeah.
Because when I got the call for that my mom was in hospital, I was on a job in the middle of some shithole somewhere in
Mm.
trying to make, because I was often sent to some really shitty areas and I had to find the beauty in
Which
some really
sounds like you
horrific
would have been the
areas, right?
perfect man for the job, though. Yeah.
And I was on a job when I got that phone call saying you've got to fly back to Kenya immediately. You know, your mom's in
Far
a
out. Yeah.
coma kind of
Oh
thing.
my
And so
God.
I I just left the job. And when I told my boss, I was like, I'm getting on a plane. She was like, well, what about the images? And I was like, my mom's dying.
Not important. Yeah.
I don't care, you
Yeah.
know?
Good on
But
you. I love that. Did you say that
yeah,
to her?
well, yeah, I mean, she did apologize later, you
Yeah,
know,
good.
when I got back,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
was just like, I'm not working for,
Priorities. Yeah. If you've got no values.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, going on to the feminine thing. So I was working for brands and not really had to stick to their briefs. And when COVID hit, I was just like, you know what? I want to do what makes my heart sing. I really,
Mm.
really do. And what makes my heart sing is photographing the feminine. I was getting very much into my spirituality. I was in women's groups and moon circles and all these beautiful, beautiful
Mm.
things that I love so much.
Mm.
And you know, with the hypnotherapy in the background and all of that kind of stuff, I was really changing. Or not changing the course, because I was always more spiritual, but just I wanted to go on more of a healing photography journey.
Mm. I love that.
And yeah, and how could I be of service to women in that way without like doing women's circles? You know, how could I incorporate my photography?
To achieve the same thing, but through your medium sort of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
love the feminine form. And I come from a very fine art background. When I studied at uni, we had a very traditional classical way of being taught photography. For a whole year, I had to draw to learn how to
Oh,
see
I
dark and
love
light.
that.
Yeah, with pencil
Wow.
for a
Yeah.
whole year.
Yeah.
And then you know those big they're like marble busts of like Queen Victoria and
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
you know, they're kind of horrible, but we had to draw them. Hours and hours of drawing every day, like 8 hours of drawing a day, just to draw these big marble busts. So you can, and they're
Yeah.
white, you know,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
marbles. All you can see is the light and the dark and the shades and everything. And that was incredible training for me. It was a very classical form of training, so that when I ended up going into photography, I then had to we went into black and white photography for 2 years. We had to only shoot black and white until we'd mastered it, and then we did color. And we're printing and doing studio
Wow.
work only black and white.
Yeah. Yeah.
So into black and white, I actually see in black and white when I shoot, because I can see all the textures and the tones and stuff. So when I shoot, I put my I dial my screen to
Mm.
be monotone, because I need to, it's the way, because it was so kind of ingrained in me to see all the light and
Been
dark,
trained that way. Yeah.
how I
That's what
have
you
to,
look for.
oh,
That's what you
yeah.
see. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of my work is in black and white as well, because I just find it so like classical
Oh,
and it
yeah.
it's
It's
time
impactful and yes,
it
definitely.
it doesn't go out of fashion in a way. It's kind of it's classical, and it just keeps, it's timeless in a way. And anyway, so going back to I studied fine art as well. I majored in fine art. And so I've always been into that whole fine art style.
Mm.
And so my photography has always had that in it. Even the tribal photography, the portraits that I take, they're very clean. They're they are a little bit journalistic documentary, but they're very clean and quite fine arty. And that's why I sell them to put on,
For your prints on your walls.
big,
Yeah. Yeah.
oversized African tribal portraits, which I sell on my site. But the when I went into the more sacred feminine stuff, I was like, I'm going to still incorporate my style, which is very clean and elegant, but I want to express the essence of the sacred feminine, the femininity of women. But I also want it to be a healing process where women get, in some ways, it's not just a photo shoot. It's like it's it's a journey. So women, from the day we're little girls, we're conditioned to judge each other and ourselves.
Yeah.
We really
Yeah.
are.
So true.
And so how can you stop judging yourself? Like if I kind of looked in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, my ass looks big in this, and then you judge other people and stuff, how can I actually stop judging myself?
Mm.
And I feel that you can do that by confronting yourself, by
Mm.
confronting all of the aspects of yourself,
Mm.
and all the parts of you that you look at that you don't, that are flawed. They're actually perfectly, they're perfect
Perfect.
imperfection, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
agree.
when you're on a shoot, it's really, if you're a woman who's never been photographed like this before, because I do have a lot of women who are totally free and liberated, and
Oh, wow. Who are these creatures?
yeah, I mean, there's quite a few in Byron where I live. There's other women that it's very, very confronting
Mm.
to have a
God,
shoot like
yes. Yeah,
that.
definitely.
But what a wonderful thing to do is to confront your fear, of actually stripping yourself back and having like no sorry, I'm just looking at something here. I've got a little note here. Yeah, it allows you to be completely comfortable in your skin, because when you go on this shoot, you're vulnerable, you're maybe you haven't been seen naked by anyone but your partner for the last couple of
Mm.
years, or whatever
Mm.
it is, and then suddenly you're in front of this random photographer, and I'm art directing my client to go, okay, I want you to come, show I want you to turn around and put your arm up like this, and you're sitting there and you're naked and you're lying on the sand or the rock, and you're like, what the hell's going on? But how wonderful, because you're part of nature and
Oh,
you're being stripped back completely.
yeah.
And often I feel that out of the vulnerability comes this empowerment, this like, oh my God, this doesn't feel so bad. This feels amazing. It's like I'm free, I'm liberated, I feel empowered. And the photos that I shoot are not they're I obviously know the best angles, and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah. Not
photograph.
gonna shine somebody in a bad light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of women see them afterwards and they're like, my God, I never thought that I looked like this.
Mm.
I never realized that's like how beautiful I
Me.
was. Or
Yeah.
if a woman is going through a transformational process, like a lot of women I find contact me when they're going through something big, like they're stepping into something huge, like they've just broken up a relationship,
Mm.
or they're
Mm.
about to,
What a beautiful rite of passage gift to give to yourself.
yeah, it's like a rite
Yeah.
of passage, or
Yeah.
gone through some trauma, or maybe physical abuse, whatever it is, and they
Yeah.
want to
Empowered.
feel
That's the empowerment
empowered
piece.
again, or they want images of their body pre-baby, or
Mm.
they're starting to go through that process where they've just found out they're pregnant, and they're just like, oh my God, this is my maiden body, and I want to,
Mm.
really, I'm proud of it, and it's going to change, and stuff like that. So it's the images, and because they're fine art, because the images I take are arty,
Mm.
they're not erotic in any way. They're
No
sensual.
way. Far from. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even put you in that same category. It's to me, it's all nature. It's
Yeah.
just nature. It's beautiful,
And
feminine nature. Yeah.
yeah, and I think women are held by Mother Nature. You know, they're
No,
lying on the
I
rocks, and
love that.
they become part of the rock, and the images look like that. They look like they're you know, the Mother Earth is feminine, and I feel like she just wraps herself around these
Mm.
women, and just they go through their process, and they're lying naked on the sand or on a rock, and it's kind of like it's so beautiful for me to witness, you know, like
Mm.
a woman embracing this, and afterwards the women are so alive inside. They just, you know, they're skipping around naked around the rocks, and I'm just like, what's just
All
happened?
the
And
fear is
there's
gone.
all this energy, and they realize that it's just so natural and normal, and who cares? It's like being, it's like a playing like a child again. I always tell my
Mm.
clients they're like a little adventure, and it's going to be really, really fun.
Mm.
As you know, as soon as they just let it go,
Mm.
they're having
They
so much
step
fun,
into, yeah.
and they're stepping into this beautiful femininity. And I show them the photos that I'm taking, and we're like, oh my God. And then we start co-creating together, and they want to, you know, because of what they're seeing, I'm I'm shooting, they actually, I think they're like, oh my God, it actually is quite a beautiful image or images. And then
Mm.
they start really working with me, and we just create
Oh,
so.
I love that.
And there was one more thing I want to say. Oh yeah, and also I've been in the same position because I've had, you know, boyfriends who were photographers and stuff like that. And um I've been like, you know, been I've stripped myself naked, and I'm lying on these hard rocks and been in the sand and had waves crashing and sand,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's really not elegant, you know,
No,
really.
the reality of it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I really know what it feels
You
like
have the awareness. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that, and that's why I'm not going to, you know, make my clients be, you know, lying on a sharp rock for a long period. I want to get that shot done so
And
that
then,
they have a
yeah,
rest and move, and
but it's so worth the shot,
it's
right?
so
Just
worth the shot. Yeah, and
yeah.
yeah, it just makes me so happy. And often I get a lot of messages afterwards just saying, my God, you know, I just feel so like embodied in my body now, and I just, my sense of worth is, I
Mm.
really feel, you know, confident in who I am, and really like so much self-love. And because I'm always, you know, I'm coaching as I'm shooting as well, and I'm like, you know, observe your body with kindness. It's done so much for you. You know, if you've had 2 kids already, it's like, oh my God, you've birthed 2 kids.
Mm. Yep,
Like, are you,
literally grown flesh
it's
and blood
like,
within you. Yeah.
exactly, like really be kind to your body. And the more kinder you are to your body and yourself, the more your body, well, this is what happens with me. I feel like the more I love my boobs, or I used to, weirdly, I don't know how, but when I was younger, I was like, oh, I hate my boobs or whatever. And now I love my boobs, and I'm like, my God, I love my boobs, you
No,
know.
I love
I
that
swear to God, my boobs um like look
because you've loved them.
really,
They look so
they look
great
really
because you've
good
loved them. Yeah.
because I'm sending my body love, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like, wow, you know, the more you really acknowledge your body and your feet and your hands, your
Appreciate.
eyes for what they do, you see,
Yes.
you know, your
Yes.
feet, they carry you around. They're like, we really got to give more
Love.
acknowledgement and
It's that.
appreciation for this vessel that we're in. And the more you do that, the more you shift your mindset, and
Mm.
the more you accept who you are, and the less you judge others.
I love that so much. And it's kind of your photography shows me and I at the feeling why just the thought of people walking away and seeing that it's because your images show you that you are a part of something bigger, being part of nature. I feel that's probably and that to have that in your heart like to feel really connected with nature. Like no
Yeah.
wonder these women are walking away feeling just so having such an impact on them. And the aspect that I wanted to touch on as well is having imagery like that. I did some coaching around this where I was so focused on aspects that I thought were horrible about me. And yes, there's aspects of all human beings that are horrible, but what about the other spectrum of this?
Mm.
But I was so hyper focused on this one element that I just disregarded all the other beautiful things about me because I was so, and I feel that your photography opens that mindset. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I am good. It's not just this tiny little thing like you've got horse blinkers on. You are a whole spectrum of aspects of everything about you. So what a beautiful gift to give to women. So
I think, you know, also at the beginning of the shoots, it is quite a spiritual
it would
experience.
have to be to let them lower their inhibitions and
Yeah, because
yeah.
and you know, I always start and we do like a little meditation and visualization, and I really get them to kind of really sink into their bodies. And then we set an intention. And I honestly, I I've got to say, like, I set an intention every single shoot that I shoot. And when I set that intention with my client, and they set their own intention for what they
Mm,
want to bring out in the shoot, and I set my intention and I do my prayers. They don't see me doing all my prayers, but I do them.
mm.
Um, and every single time the shoot is a success. In, you
She
know, like
set
it
that
just
intention.
and
Yeah.
I really, really believe in, you know, really focusing and setting your intentions, and I guess also calling out to the universe what you want the shoot to, what you want to achieve in the, you know, in that moment, in that process. And I feel that if I do that, I work in like more of a flow state.
Mm. I love that. Thank
Mm.
you so much for the most special and most empowering and insightful and remarkable podcast interview. This has been, it's gone above and beyond my expectations like you wouldn't
Aw.
believe. Oh my God, Louisa, thank you so much. But I think best we are going to have to wrap up,
I know we are,
which
we
is a
are.
real shame. But I just wanted to ask two more questions of you. Firstly, where can everybody explore? Where's the best place to explore this amazing gift that you give to women? And they can buy the journal as well.
Oh yeah, this is my journal. It's called
Ah, there it is. Yep, everybody that can't see,
Sacred.
it's the
Yeah.
Sacred Journal. It's
And it's
filled
got
with your beautiful fine
beautiful
art, black and
images.
white photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. That is on my website. I think the best place is really on my website, which is louisaseton.com. Um, and I do have Instagram. I'm not really that active so much on
Mm,
Instagram anymore. But I've got two handles. One is Louisa Seton Photography, and the other one is Sacred Feminine Photography.
mm.
But my
Both beautiful.
website's where you find
That's your
everything.
hub. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got my prints, on my African tribal prints. It's got my journal. It's got my sacred feminine photography and package outlines. And I'm also going to start. I'm writing education. I'm going to start doing workshops to teach other photographers, aspiring photographers, how to
Oh,
shoot
wow.
feminine form. Yeah, so
Oh,
I've
that's
just finished
wonderful gift.
writing.
Wow.
And so if you want to photograph women in the style that I do, then I'm gonna start teaching how to photograph the feminine form in an elegant and graceful way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And lucky last question, a question which is why we're both here, is what does creating the muse mean to you?
Creating the muse means to me, I think it's it's tapping into a wellspring of inspiration and creativity, that it's my creativity. And I see like my muse is in everything. It's in the beauty of everything that I look around and see. It's in the women that I photograph. The women are my muses.
Most definitely.
And
Yeah.
I feel that that inspiration and that creativity, if I really you know stick to that, then I'm creating from a more authentic kind of place inside of me.
Beautifully said. I love that response. Thank you so much. Thank you again for absolutely everything. We'll have to have you on the podcast yet again, methinks.
Sorry, I was talking so much. I was
Oh
like,
no, it's so perfect on so many levels. Like I said, above and beyond what I my expectations were. And yeah, you're extraordinary. So thank you for sharing who you are with our listeners and our followers. And I cannot wait. Your magazine is out at the end of this month on the 30th, I think, on the Sunday. So I'm looking forward to sharing more about this interview and, of course, featuring some of your epic work in the magazine and you on the front cover.
I've never personally been on a front cover. Like I've had my work on a front cover.
Yeah, yeah, but that
But
is that's what we're all about. It's the woman behind the extraordinary things that she creates. So
yeah,
thank you so much. I really
my pleasure.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.